Hi, Kalpun Piso here. We are evolved, mutated primates that created the mind and the delusions of God with our brains. This is proven with DNA. If you believe in God or any other imaginary friend, you're either a child, very ignorant, psychotic, have ingested one Amanita muscaria mushroom too many, or really retarded. Those are the facts. Here is the truth.
Science should fundamentally both explain existing data and make predictions.
That's right.
As we've seen, Darwin predicted that the Earth must be old, that transitional fossils must have existed in the past.
That's right.
That variants must be able to arise and spread through populations, and that very different organisms must be related to one another.
Exactly.
Every one of those predictions has been resoundingly confirmed by all kinds of independent data.
Exactly.
From physics, from geology, from paleontology, from genetics, from biochemistry,
all of it,
from molecular biology, and from embryology.
All are connected.
That's why evolution is regarded as a well-established fact by scientists.
That's right.
And that's why we consider it a key organizing principle for understanding.
That's right. There you go, Christ-psychotics.
And interrelationships between living forms.
Yes. To Dr. Wells, the Genographic Institute, the search for DNA and our ancestry is all in our genes, produce interesting results and proves we are nothing but apes. By the way, white supremacist, we were all black. I came from Africa. Deal with it.
Like those who lived about 1,500 miles north of the sun near Tanzania's Serengeti. The Hadzabe.
They are one of the last groups of hunter-gatherers on Earth, essentially using fairly primitive technology to survive. And that's the way we lived for most of our history.
Hadzabe, like the sun, connect back to scientific Eve. But by studying the differences in their DNA, scientists revealed that by around 150,000 years ago, our founding population had split in two. It is the first branch on our family tree. The earliest major movement of people our genes have measured. One group became the ancestors of the San, the other the ancestors of the Hadzabe and other African groups, and ultimately the entire rest of the world.
The lineages that define the San versus the Hadzabe only join up right near the base. Okay, basically back at the root of the tree, main line of human evolution for about 100,000 years.
No one knows exactly what led to this split, but all signs point to climate. Slight changes in Earth's orbit ushered in a new ice age, and climate shifted for 100,000 years. In the northern hemisphere, that meant ice and cold. But in Africa, things became blisteringly dry.
Over 100,000
years ago, our lush cradle of humanity transformed into desert. Many scientists believe massive deserts not only drove a wedge between the ancestors of the San and the Hadzabe, they almost wiped them off the face of the earth.
These kinds of shifts would have made a difference. It would have isolated populations. It could have shut shop and made them, really suffer quite hardships. So climate, in that sense, has been central to everything.
And geneticists say it was the bleakest in our history. Huddled around shrinking sources of water, our ancestors were hanging on by a thread. No one knows how big the initial human population was, But based on the lack of genetic variation during the mega drought years, the number dropped to as few as 2,000 people. We were an endangered species.
If you take that at face value, our species is hanging on by its fingernails. We are on the verge of extinction.
The state of Nebraska is locked in one of its worst dry spells in decades, as high temperatures and dry conditions shrivel crops and have
Somehow, these people made it through the population crunch.
A few years, a handful of warnings suggested that farmers plant drought-resistant crops and offered tips about how to keep fields as moist as possible.
Gary's cousins, some 5,000 generations removed, the Hadzabe's, may offer some insight into how we hunt. Wells has been working with Chief Julius Ndaya to record the Hadzabe's ancient survival strategies, while helping to preserve them for future generations.
You are taking blanchie, and then you are cut, and then you are going there for 3 times per day, and then 2 days. Coffee.
Julius can read the forest, the savanna that we're walking through as though it's a book. It's like walking through a library with him, and he'll pull a volume from the shelf and he'll fan it to page 45 and read some passage to you.
See, poison, very poisonous. But the roots is a very nice medicine for stomach.
That's fine.
Accumulated knowledge, advanced tools, language. Many scientists believe our ancestors began developing these skills during that time when our species was on the brink.
It wasn't until we went through that climate crunch that you really needed those skills in order to survive.
It was survival of the fittest. Climate change may have actually made us tougher and smarter. The drought in Africa lets up for a time.
And they should be thankful I don't go back like over 500 million years. Then we'll go into bacteria, cyanobacteria, instead of black people. It's all in the brain. Check it out. They communicate with each other, the neurons.
Our brains are made of neurons.
There you go, Christian.
100 billion of them.
Thought is nothing more than a community of neurons talking to each other for a fraction of a second.
There you go.
Passes his message on to the next.
They create God this way.
Not bad.
Learn, Christians.
One would have...
Anyone that believes in God in this 21st century is stuck in the past, and they should have their brains repaired. They're no different than schizophrenics.
Today, we know that elements make up not just life, but also everything in the universe. All the elements, including ones essential
and the Epicureans, the early atheists,
clouds of debris left over from dying stars billions of years ago.
Everything that exists is made of the same basic stuff. And this unification of the chemistry of the humans and what happens here on Earth with the rest of the universe brought us much closer to the rest of the universe than we thought possible before.
Don't tell that to the deluded Christ-psychotics and people of faith. They believe we were zapped into existence by a God, which is a creation of our brains. That's a fact. Check it out. We're composed of atoms, aren't we? We have DNA, we have genes. Science crushes the delusions of this schizophrenia believing God.
Life began. All living things are made up of fundamental ingredients called elements.
Elements are basically atoms. They're the building blocks of everything that you see around you. They make up the rocks, the earth. They make up, obviously, oxygen that we breathe. They're the building oxygen that we breathe.
Theotards, or people infected with faith psychosis, they have no idea what atoms are. They're stuck in the past. They're deluded and ignorant and psychotic. So, we must put them in mental institutions, label believing God as a form of schizophrenia. The world will be a better place. Pace Dios.